We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back with Liberty Nation's editor-in-chief, Lisa K. Donner. Earlier in the show, we were talking about the vast sums. I can't even describe how much money it is that goes flowing into American universities from Arab Muslim states.
I wrote mind-bending, so you're welcome to.
I'll use that word. It is mind-bending.
It is. It really is.
Now, tell me about the students, Lisa. Tell me about the students. Why are they
it's interesting.
Open to essentially they're being paid to be activists and they don't even realize it?
Well, first of all, we've got something going on called a lack of education. In this case, ignorance is not bliss. It just really isn't. Mark, a recent report found out that nearly 1/3 of all Americans, that's 31%, and more than 4 in 10 millennials, 41%, believe that substantially less than 6 million Jews were killed during the Holocaust. So we're talking 1 million, 2 million. Some of them say, I don't know. I mean, basically, they just aren't educated about the Holocaust and World War II. And this isn't something that happened centuries and centuries ago, We're not talking about the Roman occupation of Israel or something like that. We're talking about something that was a prime, I guess, the most significant event of the 20th century. I think that's fair to say.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned those numbers because we know ourselves that polls, the polls, they aren't always understand. And maybe you don't know somebody personally who believes that, but there was Ben Shapiro was in England recently and speaking at the Oxford and Cambridge unions.
He wasn't disinvited? Oh
no, he was there because they were talking about this particular event. Excuse me. And one of the young Muslim ladies who was questioning him said it's different to the Second World War because Britain didn't bomb German civilians, and it was she'd never heard of Dresden, or she didn't understand that Dresden it demolished the entire city of Dresden.
She
didn't seem to know that had even happened, and I mean that literally there was a gasp within the hall, so at least some of the students did understand that they just went oh when she said that Britain didn't bomb German cities.
These are
the elite universities, and they don't know basic history, Lisa.
Well, what I could find, and I did a lot of research on this, but what I could find was that 23 states have laws mandating the Holocaust be taught in schools in the United States. Of course, that leaves 27 that don't have the mandate. But it sort of bothers me. Why do we have to have a mandate? I mean, this is American history. We're talking 6 million Jews. We're also talking hundreds of thousands of Americans who fought in this war. Men, women, young people, who gave their lives so that,
hundreds
we wouldn't be speaking German today.
Yeah, hundreds of thousands of American lives in each theater of war, Europe and the Pacific.
Yeah, so why do we have to mandate that the Holocaust be taught? Why isn't that just part of American history? I don't know, but
that's a valid question. I don't think that anybody who runs these educational institutions or even the education boards are likely to give you an answer. I mean, that they will go to the wall to include a gay character in a kiddies book. But in terms of teaching actual history, it seems as though they only want to teach a specific history that creates a narrative. I mean, we heard about it.
So then does it come as any surprise that the demographics for these people that are pro-Israel are older Americans versus younger Americans, Republicans over liberal Democrats, right? A recent poll, I was reading AP, and they found 50% of Democrats approve of how Biden has navigated the conflict, while 46% of the Democrats disapprove of how he's handled it. And that's really interesting because the party of the Jewish people in America has always been the Democratic Party, always. And now that seems to be rapidly changing, over the, considering there's the voice of the squad and, 4 or 5 people, but they're shouting louder and louder
Well, there's something to be said for the idea of having a big tent. But if you have a big tent, you also can't be too controlling or too vociferous in your positions, because that big tent is going to get alienated and turned into lots of little tents. I think this is what's happened to the Democrats. Uh, they've tried to pull everybody together, a group of disparate people who are essentially anti-Republican. That's what they tried to get together.
Exactly. Now I think the Jewish Democrats are really rethinking their party positions, and they really should. Now, so far, Biden and company has hung on to a pro-Israel sentiment, but I wonder if that's starting to slip just a little bit in their verbal comments. Have you noticed?
I have indeed. There was a couple of interesting things that happened a week or so ago. It was the Muslim Democrat Association. I can't remember the exact name of it, but they sent Joe Biden a letter saying you need to call for a ceasefire, or all of our funding, all of our things, we're pulling it. And anyway, the very next day, Anthony Blinken wings his way out to Israel to say, we just need a pause.
Pause. It's not a ceasefire. It's a pause.
And the cracks are forming in this. What I thought, and I was actually very surprised when Joe Biden made his first speech on this, and I thought he was coherent, which blew me away from the start. He was actually coherent, but he talked with a lot of strength, and I thought, well, this is probably what's needed. You need Joe Biden to be, as the leader of the free world, to be strong and coherent. And he looked it, and it seemed, I was almost convinced for a moment, and then this happens, and he sends Anthony Blinken off to go and
it's not a ceasefire; it's a pause, right?
Yeah, and then of course, he's got his red lines, which anybody who remembers Barack Obama's red lines will know where this is going to end. Where he said, if anybody else is thinking about getting involved, don't. And then he looked at the camera, don't. He said it again, very serious. And I thought, oh, that could work. Anyway, the next day, you have the who is it in Lebanon? The Hezbollah in Lebanon start throwing in a few rockets here and there, and then a week later, you've got the Houthis out in Yemen, and they've started bombing in, and they're going after the shipping lane. So everybody got involved, and everybody ignored Joe Biden. And what did he do?
He bombed an empty
warehouse. Yes,
warehouse.
That was
it was an empty warehouse.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the extent of the response under Joe Biden. So the cracks are forming in both the leadership and the party. You're absolutely right, Lisa. I can't see how he can hold together a loose coalition when he doesn't even have the courage of his stated convictions.
Well, I just want to wrap it up with one comment about the business of the kids on campuses, and that is, you've got all these groups, the Democratic Socialists of America, the Palestinian Youth Movement, Students for Justice in Palestine, the U.S. Palestinian Community Network. There's all these groups. Then they weren't educated about the Holocaust. Then there's tons of money flowing in from Qatar and other Arab nations. It's almost like they don't have a chance of really figuring out, it's just much easier to go along with the crowd. And the crowd now is, at least on campuses in the United States, is very pro-Palestinian. And it's really very scary, I think, especially if you're on campus and you're a Jewish student. And it's a far way away from U.S. policy and where it has been for almost a century.
Absolutely right, Lisa. And it brings no surprise that homeschooling is on the massive rise.
Massive, yes.
Lisa K. Donna, thank you ever so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mark.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Don't get caught up in the media madness. Join our movement for free thinking and free speech at libertynation.com. Publishing news and analysis 24/7 with original articles by our team of authors who tell it like it is. Join us each week for online TV shows, The Uprising Podcast, and Liberty Nation Radio. We believe in free thinking and free speech. We are libertynation.com.